is one of the most famous actors of our generation. I remember my wife used to watch the show. I watched the show. He's also the author of a new book, Pride Comes Before the Fall. A really good friend to liberty and freedom. Kirk Cameron. Kirk, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Dan, how great to be on your show. Thank you for having me on. And you're a hero to so many. And it's just, it's way cool to think that you used to watch Growing Pains back in the day.
Kirk, I got to tell you, man, I was addicted to the show so much so that we have the Goofy Glue incident from your show has become a thing on our show. That's how often I watch that show. No one can explain the Goofy Glue incident. Do you remember that, the Goofy Glue incident? Because I use it on my show and we don't know what it is. What was the Goofy Glue incident?
You don't want to know. That's why we
That's
never
how bad it is.
That's how bad it is.
I love this guy.
No one talks. No one talks about the Goofy
It's like
Glue
Fight Club,
incident.
Kirk.
In fact,
This is great.
those three words should rarely even be uttered. Goofy Glue incident. I've said it more now in the last minute than I have in the last 30 years. And there's good reason for that.
God.
I'll have to discuss
You sound afraid.
you, off the air.
Off the Jim, he sounds afraid. Okay, Kirk, you got me a little scared. We got to follow this up with a personal conversation. Kirk's the author of a book, Pride Comes Before the Fall. Pick it up today wherever you get the books. I'm going to talk about wherever you get your books. I'm going to talk about that in a segment. Kirk, just before we get started, I was about, 42, 43 before I got any degree of public notoriety where people would, recognize you kind of out in public. And I didn't really hit I never got to anywhere near your level. I mean, you were just all over on magazines and all this other stuff. But I have to tell you, even at 40, it gets corrupting and you have to, you know this better than anyone. You have to constantly tell yourself, don't be a jerk. You're a child of God and act like it and do the right thing. You were famous. Yeah. I mean, super famous at a very early age where, I think you'd admit you probably don't have all the tools you'd have in adulthood. How did that impact you? Did you, did you find it as corrupting as I did?
Well, it's interesting. It was the only normal life I had. I didn't have another more normal teenage life to compare it to. So I just had to roll with it. I was so young when I was on Growing Pains. I was 14. I had barely grown a bicep at that point, and they were putting me in tank tops as sort of like teen hunk centerfolds in these magazines like Tiger Beat, right? I mean, I don't even think I had hair on my upper lip yet. But, I was surrounded by some good people, and it was a good, wholesome show. And interestingly, you talk about child of God. I was an atheist at the time. And so my moral standards weren't something that I downloaded from heaven or anything like that. But when the fame started at such a young age, I thought it was strange. I thought I didn't really understand it. But then eventually I came to kind of appreciate the fact that we were a bit of an example to families and to young kids who were sort of looking up to us as role models. And I wanted to do right by that. And so I tried to live a life that would, teach kids to say no to drugs and the Just Say No campaign back in the 80s. You might remember that. And then eventually I sort of pulled my head out of the sand of atheism, and I started to look around and thought, you know what? I'm not as smart as I think I am, and I believe that we're all here for a reason and that this is an incredible design. And I wanted to live my life in a way that said thank you for all of that.
Wow. Kirk, that's just, you're blowing me away. I'm so not used to hearing this from people who grew up in the entertainment Hollywood community. It's just so rare. Why aren't there more like you who think like that?
Well, but what I just told you is not nearly as crazy as the Goofy Glue incident. But we can't talk about that right now.
Yeah, that's a
I think there probably are some more here in Hollywood. In fact, I know there are. And I mean Hollywood proper. We've got the entertainment industry, which stretches everywhere now because anybody can pull out a camera and have an Instagram account, and you can make a documentary. But there are people here. I think many of them are understandably afraid to poke their head out from their turtle shell. And while some people are coming out of the closet in different ways, we've got conservatives and Christians who are hiding in the closet because, they got a target on them. And so they want to keep their head down.
Yeah, I get that, Kirk, but we're talking to Kirk Cameron, author of the new book, Pride Comes Before the Fall. I promise you we're going to get to that, folks. But Kirk, what I don't get is, Jesus told his apostles go forth with nothing, right? They knew they'd be killed. Peter was hung upside down. They were poisoned. They were attacked, stoned, beheaded, basically violently beaten over and over again. And I think to myself, and I think you probably think too, like, we've led pretty easy lives. I mean, if the worst that's going to happen to me and you is that somebody goes, oh, look at these clowny Jesus lover guys, whatever, that's nothing. Like, you're not going to be hung upside down. No one's going to stone you in public. And that's why, Kirk, when I hear guys like you, it's so refreshing, but that's why I'm so disappointed in other people with a platform like yours, famous people in Hollywood and sports, who don't come out when the Dodgers celebrate this vile group insulting Christianity and say, you know what? I'm not going to be martyred for this. I'm no hero, but I'm not tolerating this today. I'm not playing today's game. I'm sorry. There should be more of you.
Yeah. Well, you don't know my dark side, so I don't know how many more of me you want in the world. But Dan, I appreciate you. You're a man of faith and character and courage. That's an understatement, and we're so grateful for you. And listen, I think that there comes a time in every man or every woman's life where you need to reconcile with God about who you are and whose you are and why you're here. And for me, that really kicked into overdrive when I had kids. My wife and I have 6 children. Our kids are now grown, and because of my understanding of where we're headed culturally, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we've kind of learned over the last few years that the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth is about 6 months.
Right, exactly.
And if you look at history, what's happening in our country is really the beginning stages of a cultural revolution, not unlike what we see with the Chinese Communist Revolution or the Bolshevik Revolution, what we see in Cuba and other authoritarian dictatorships or communist regimes. And my Taiwanese neighbors can tell me that. My Jewish neighbors up the street and my Cuban neighbors tell me that they feel like they're watching a bad movie that they've seen before, and they know how it ends, and it's not pretty. That's why they came to America. And they're dumbfounded how Americans can be so blind to the signs of what's going on. And I understand. We grew up in the 70s and 80s. We had such a beautiful time of peace and freedom.
Wasn't it great?
Yet
it was. It was so you Growing Pains and all these shows. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's right. We never talked about the Goofy Glue incident. We had our acid wash jeans, and we listened to Prince with our mullet hairstyles. But now we see what's been underway. We've seen that we have not been tending the garden, and the weeds are now growing up. And the gophers are infiltrating everywhere, the family, the church, and civil government. And thank God for guys like you. And when more of us do what you have done, and that is get on the front line, stop being on the defense, don't sit on the couch and watch your favorite news outlet, putting your face in your hands, crying in your Chick-fil-A soup, waiting for somebody else to rescue you, and say, wait a minute, God put me here to do something. And I can't do everything, but I can do my part. And I'm just trying to make the most of this opportunity to stand for faith and stand for virtue and character. And one way I'm trying to do it is by reading children's books about faith, hope, and love and humility, and say, down with pride, down with authoritarian government, and up with loving God, loving your family, and loving your country.
Well, this is the perfect time to transition to the book, because your book, we're talking to Kirk Cameron. You know him, famous actor. Kirk has a book out called Pride Comes Before the Fall. Pick it up today wherever you get your books. We got to support this man, his work. Kirk, everybody in the library system run by liberals seems terrified of you reading this book to kids. I've noticed they've been developing special plans about it. It's crazy. Like, there's a battle plan to keep you out of libraries from reading this book to kids. What are they so afraid of that's in this book?
Yeah. Well, this reads like a crazy story. Last Christmas, I wrote a little book called As You Grow, and I wanted to do a public library story hour. And I was denied by over 50 woke libraries that previously held drag queen story hours. When I confronted them and threatened to assert my constitutional rights for their viewpoint discrimination in a public library, they reversed course. We went to Indianapolis Public Library and were greeted by over 3,000 parents and children, overwhelming 6 floors of the library, singing songs in between the book aisles and holding their own reading times because they couldn't all fit inside the reading room. So this has happened in Loudoun County. We went to San Francisco. We went to D.C., New York, L.A., Arizona. But now it seems that we've awoken the Balrogs deep within the American Library Association. We had recently just broke the story that the director of the Office of Intellectual Freedom, ironically, is censoring and sabotaging a nationwide event that we have started. It's going to be on August 5th called See You at the Library. It's our take on See You at the Poll, where families would gather at flagpoles of schools to pray. This is families gathering at public libraries to read a book of virtue for their children. And they have come unglued. And now they're actively teaching librarians how to break the law and either pretend like the library's not open that day or that the library is full of made-up events so that there's no room for families who want to show up at their own libraries to read books to their kids.
Kirk, I got about a minute left and I got to run, but my experience with this, being a tech entrepreneur in specifically the free speech space, is every effort they make to put their thumb on your neck and shut you up is only going to magnify your message. I think 3,000 people at the library, in your experience, confirms that, correct?
Yes, and I would encourage everyone to join us. Go to bravebooks.com. You can get my book, Pride Comes Before the Fall, for free, and click on the See You at the Library tab, and we'll show you how to host a Brave Story Hour at your library and send a message to the Balrogs that good wins over evil.
Folks, let's do that today, please. I don't ask a lot of favors. I have no economic interest in this at all. I only have a passion for the cause, and this man is with us. Bravebooks.com. Click on the book, Pride Comes Before the Fall, and find out how to host an event in a town near you. Please, in the name of God, and I'm not using his name in vain. This country's worth saving, and we're the leaders we've been waiting for. Don't wait for someone else to do it. You do it. You can do it. Kirk, thanks so much for your time. You're welcome back here anytime. I wish we could have connected earlier, but it was so worth it. And really, you have my absolute admiration for standing up when you could have just easily punked out and been like one of these other guys and said all the talking points. You didn't. You stood up in the name of God and faith in this country, and I know my listeners respect you for it, so thanks a lot.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. There's none of us who want to draw a line in the sand, and you're giving us the red chalk to do it. So thank you, Dan. Keep it up.
Thanks a lot. You got it. Kirk Cameron, folks. You all know now that's what a real American patriot looks like. Could have taken the company line, thrown out all the pride flags, and gave all the talking points, and probably be worth billions of dollars making Marvel movies right now. Instead, he took the path of dignity, faith, and hope. And now it's up to us to support him. Bravebooks.com. Pride Comes Before the Fall. Click on that. Host one of these See You at the Library events. I'm asking you as a favor. Do one in my town. I'm in Martin County, Florida. I'll see you there.
Hi, I'm Kirk Cameron, and I'm really excited to announce something to you that we've never done before on The Courage. It's an opportunity for you and I to go to the next level of getting to know each other and enter into a whole new level of community with other people who are like-minded, who care about the same stuff. It's called The Campfire. And it's your exclusive access to join me in my backyard as I share with you some of my most personal and unedited thoughts about things like faith, family, and the culture we live in. For a while now, I've really wanted to create something that would go deeper. I've traveled the country for decades now, and I hear you. I meet thousands of you who want to go deeper, who want a more honest conversation, who want a more real connection with those who value the same things that we value. And that's what the Campfire is all about. To talk about the things that matter most to you, who want to make a difference and change our world. By signing up to join me at the Campfire, you're going to get access to insider-only video discussions with me. These are heart-to-heart conversations, things that are going on in our world, things that I'm thinking about, things that I'm praying about. I want you to know what's really going on inside my head. And I want to talk with you with a level of transparency that I don't always show when I'm just on any talk show, because I know often those comments get taken out of context. But at the Campfire, we're in the context of my backyard. It's going to be unedited, and you're going to hear the full thoughts, the real conversation, and I want to hear from you as well. You'll also get access to an exclusive Facebook group where you're going to meet other members of the Campfire community. And here's the thing, I want to hear from you. I have thoughts and ideas, but I have lots of questions that you may be able to answer for me. And that's what this is all about. This is all about community. This is all about a discussion, a conversation where we can learn from each other. There's going to be special discounts, merchandise, articles, interviews, videos, and there's even an opportunity for your writing to appear on The Courage. That's our digital destination where millions gather to read some of the best views on faith, family, and culture. And most exciting of all, your Campfire membership includes free course access to all of our Courage courses, like The Heart of Family, where you join me and my wife Chelsea at our kitchen table, and we talk about the biblically based principles that have strengthened our marriage and our family. And Engage, where I talk with experts about technology and social media and how we can partner with our kids so they can be champions, not victims, plus all the future courses that we're developing right now. So pull up a chair and join us at the Campfire. Let's share our stories as we take part in the larger one that God is writing for all of us. See you there. We need to run the plays that we have in the book. And those plays are: love God with all of your heart. Be a person of moral integrity yourself. Have some fearless faith and moral grit to get involved in the political process. Halt the evil. Don't be bribed yourself by money and power. And then teach these principles to your children. If you do that, over the long haul, we win.
Hey everyone, guess who I have on the show today? I know, it's Kirk Cameron, none other than Mike Siever. I'm so excited. And I'm excited because here's someone who has dedicated their life to God and to this country and to patriotism. He's been criticized for it because of his Christian beliefs by those who are the haters. And I'm just kind of stunned at what an upside down world we live in. But I think the message that Kirk Cameron brings, and I've been with him in person in Arizona, I felt so blessed to be able to talk about my book, which is very exciting. The Amazing Club, Awesome Sauce. I hope you all got one for your children. And if you didn't, please do, or for your grandkids. It's part of the Brave Book series. And now Kirk has his new book out. He's just launched a new book just in time for today's beginning of Pride Month. Remember Memorial Day? The guys who died fighting for this country, and women who died, the people who fought to preserve our principles and our values, they got one day. And now we get this crazy Pride Month. Well, Kirk Cameron has launched his new book with Brave Books. And I told you I'm part of the Brave Books family. I love everything Brave Books is doing to bring our children wholesome, beautiful, illustrated, great books with a moral and principles attached. And they're just so much fun. It's for the whole family. These books are just really so much fun and for the whole family. And Kirk's book is Pride Comes before the fall. Pride comes before the fall. And, I want to make something very clear here. I am not sitting here trying to push judgment on people, but something very seriously is wrong. Something is happening in our world today where our children are being robbed of their childhoods. Our world is honoring those that are violating the basic principles that make us unique and strong and loving, violating our families, this sense of like, it's all about me, and I don't know if you've all seen what's happened, but the Catholics, I'm a Catholic, pseudo-Catholic. I always joke around about that. But I have this deep, deep belief in Christ and in God, and I try to respect other people's beliefs. And I don't know if you've all have seen this, this group called and it just grosses me out so bad. I'm going to try to get their name right here, but they are the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence or something of that nature. They're just disgusting. These are men that, have been just horrible to the Catholic Church. They are queer and trans nuns. And the LA Dodgers have now allowed them to come back. They basically banned them. But what was interesting was a question that one of my producers posed. And, would the Dodgers do this to any other religion? Would they do this to a Muslim? Would they do this to, to the Jewish people? No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. There has been something very strange about how these groups and how our woke industries have been targeting Christianity, been targeting Catholicism, and that does not take away. We have seen other religious organizations and especially anti-Semitism grow in the United States like we've never seen before, and people being targeted for their principled moral beliefs. We live in an upside down world, folks. We live in an upside down world, and we should be very concerned that the Dodgers just feel so okay with this disgusting anti-Catholic hate group and with these people that have done nothing more than degrade the values of our society. But I'm bringing Kirk Cameron on, and he is going to talk to you about his book and how you and I can win, how we can get back our nation, protect our children, have an awesome, happy life, even with these disgusting, people around us, how we can stand up and speak louder and drown out these like backwards kind of, I'm just going to say it, demonic type of behavior that we're seeing come out of these groups, and how we can save our country. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Allegiance Gold. I love Allegiance Gold. They are a sponsor for our show here, the Sarah Carter Show. So I greatly appreciate everything they do to make this show happen. And right now, they are giving you the best options to diversify your funds. And I'm going to tell you right now, you'll get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sarah sent you. And my friends at Allegiance Gold can help you with your IRA, your 401k, with physical gold and silver, or have it delivered securely right to your door. They'll educate you on the benefits of physical gold. Why? Because they care and they want to build a long-term relationship with you. This isn't just about selling you something. This is about protecting you, protecting your family. Don't just trust me. Don't just trust Allegiance Gold. Read about it, learn about it, diversify your funding. Get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sarah sent you. So don't wait. Call or click today. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARAH, no H, that's SARA, or go to protectwithsarah.com. That's protectwithsarah.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks, but we can prepare. That's 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARAH, SARA, or protectwithsarah.com. Okay, I know you all have been waiting to hear from Kirk Cameron. So I'm not going to do a big intro. You all know who he is. I know my audience just loves you, Kirk. You're an actor, producer, director, but more importantly, you speak the word of God. You're an evangelist, and you have done such remarkable work in getting the word out across America, about Christ, about what's right, about, American values and patriotism. So I just want to say thank you so much for all you do before we get started. And I'm excited.
Sarah, thank you. So great to be talking with you again. Thanks for having me on the program. And I'm humbled and thrilled by all the things that are happening right now. I think we live at such an important point. It is perhaps a tipping point, and I hope that the nation is going to tip in the right direction. We're becoming dangerously close to going over the falls politically. I think perhaps we're already there financially, morally, and spiritually. But it's at that moment when you look over the falls and you say, holy cow, where have we gotten? How did we get here? And now you start screaming for help. And I think if we point our eyes up to the heavens and we humble ourselves and we pray and turn from our wicked ways, perhaps God will hear our prayers, forgive our sin, and heal our land. That's my hope and my prayer. And I think we're at that point.
From your mouth to God's ears, right? Because it is a scary time. My husband and I have 6 children between us. Our youngest is 10 years old. And one of the issues that, I find so difficult now as compared to the older kids, she was our younger one, our unexpected one, but is the changes that we're seeing not only in the school systems, but on television. It's almost as if they're indoctrinating our children in these bizarre, so far away from God, so far away from the core principles that America was founded on, these ideals that don't even belong in a children's lexicon, right? Children's books that are filled with sexual innuendos and some straight out unbelievable stuff that I've never even read in an adult book. I won't even say it here because I don't know if kids are listening to this podcast with their moms and dads, but I think the moms and dads do understand. And, people out there trying to change the way our children think. They're frightening them. They're making them confused about their own bodies, their own sexuality. Talk a little bit about that and how, as Christians, we can come to terms with this when our children are being bombarded, Kirk, every single day with this junk. And this, I almost feel like it's demonic. There's no other word to describe it.
Well, I think all of your spidey senses are right on point. And the benefit that you have, Sarah, and that I have, and many of us have who have a moral compass, is that we're looking at the world through the lens of the scriptures, through that Judeo-Christian grid that tells us that something's off, that what kids are learning in public schools, what they're seeing and experiencing in public libraries at drag queen story hours is inappropriate. It's harmful. However, when you remove the Bible and that Judeo-Christian moral grid, now it's anybody's game to determine what is morally right and what is morally wrong. So as a nation, we continue to move further and further away from the root that made this nation so healthy, that has produced so much sweet fruit of liberty and blessing and protection. God even tells us in the scriptures that he deals with nations in ways that demonstrate his faithfulness. If you keep covenant with God, he keeps covenant with you. If you ignore God and you push him out and you say, we don't need him in schools, we'll in fact make prayer illegal, we'll remove your moral standard of the 10 Commandments from our laws in our courtroom, and we will call good evil, evil good. We'll redefine marriage. We'll declare the family basically unnecessary because we have government programs to deal with these things now. When you do that, now you get into Romans chapter 1. Now you get into ancient Israel times where God says, okay, you can have it just the way you want it until you choke on it. And then when you're gagging and on your back out in the wilderness, not knowing where you are or who you are, call out to me and I will be here. But there's a window of the grace of God, and he's long suffering and he's patient. But what we need to do is respond to his kindness and to his patience with repentance. We need to come back to God. We need to come back to our senses. We need to go back to the things that made this the freest, strongest, most blessed and generous nation in the world. And that is loving God, loving our neighbors, and applying the eternal rules of right to our government, to our churches, and to our families. If we will do that, we can see good times again.
Right. And to give our children what they desperately and so longingly need, which is direction and boundaries and rules.
That's right.
And, you know, I felt so lucky to be able to be part of the Brave Book series that you've just been amazing with this. And As We Grow was your first book. And now you have your second book, which is Pride Comes Before the Fall. And this is not just about books. I'm not here having you on the show just to sell a book. I actually believe in this. I actually believe that our children are desperate for something more than what they've been given. And what they've been given is, you're absolutely right, is this lack of sense of direction, this kind of real gray space of moral it's emptiness, moral emptiness, and there's no morality there. And I want to talk about that, because I think when I heard you talk about As We Grow, your book, and you talked about America and, you know, rooting that in our nation, that Judeo-Christian, culture that we have, and how that we're losing that, but how parents are finding a way to coming back. Do you think there's hope? Do you really think that people, because they're seeing so much craziness on the radical left side, especially like Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and, you know, the all of the insanity that they're seeing as far as Disney and everything else, do you think that parents are trying to find their way back?
Parents are trying to find their way back. And you also asked, do I think that there's hope? I think that there's always hope. It's never too late, because we serve a long-suffering and patient creator. So yes, I see parents starting to fight back. It's good that parents are waking up. It's good that that our political representatives are waking up. Mama bears in school boards, dads showing up at city council meetings, parents taking their children out of a government woke indoctrination camp, which is really what it amounts to be. Public schools are not what it was when you and I were kids. And I love public school teachers who are about the good. My father is a public school teacher. So are my grandparents. However, the system has been entirely hijacked, and the goal is precisely what John Dewey and Horace Mann and others of the early American education system, public education system, envisioned, which was to train children to ultimately become socialist lemmings for the state. And that's what we're seeing. This is asymmetrical warfare coming at us from the educational side, the political side, the economic side, the moral and spiritual side. So you talk about these drag queens who have lewd and obscene depictions of the crucifix and mocking the Catholic religion, among other disgusting things. What we're actually seeing is not a moral void as much as a new morality that seeks to replace the current morality. The current morality in America, or should I say, the one our country was based on, was a biblical morality. And the point of all of this is to destabilize and to deconstruct the social system, the moral fabric, so that it can be replaced and reorganized with a different type of system. Barack Obama called it to fundamentally change America. Saul Alinsky talks rules for radicals. And this is precisely what we're seeing. And they don't even hide it. They say it out loud now. But most people are still too afraid to think that all of this is anything more than conspiracy. Someone once said that the difference between truth and conspiracy is about 6 months. And then we find out that, holy cow, all of this stuff is happening. And the mouse needs to figure out that the cheese is not free before the trap snaps on his neck. And that's what we need to do as Americans. So my part is to, first of all, be faithful as a husband and a father. I need to be, when no one's looking, the guy who wants to do the right thing and increasingly does that without anybody telling me to, that's a self-governing person. And then I need to model for others what God's told us to do. And I'm trying to do that in some small way by reading children's books in public libraries, getting into the marketplace, not just talking on podcasts and in church pews, but out there in the public square. And I'm reading Pride Comes Before the Fall because we are now entering Pride Month, where children are being taught that it is good to celebrate and even glorify who you like to have sex with, that this is a source of pride, and pride comes before the fall, the Bible says. Pride is actually the first of the 7 deadly sins because it's the deadliest. And I want to teach children that the path to blessing is the path of humility. Others first, after we love God with all of our heart. Not pride and build up myself, exalt myself and satisfy myself. Put others first. That leads to blessing.
That's exactly right. And I think a lot of people forget that this idea of pride that we've been so inundated with is really so dangerous and so selfish. I was thinking about all the parents that were at Target recently, people that have posted on Instagram and that have walked away and said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to Target. I'm not going to Walmart. Somebody was like upset with me when I went to Walmart the other day and I posted something. I met Maria at Walmart and she was like, oh, I'm a fan. And I posted something and people are like, well, I'm not going to Walmart either. It becomes very hard. It becomes very hard to live in a society where everything you buy, everything you purchase, the television that your children watch, the computers that you use, everything is connected to this bigger, very dangerous picture, right? Where it's not just about pride, it's corporations now controlling us and utilizing that. So maybe your advice on that for parents that are listening right now.
Well, I try to be a student of history. I try to be a man who prioritizes his family and read the room culturally. And what we're seeing with Target and Bud Light and North Face and Nike and other huge corporations that are so woke is really the result of something most people aren't even aware of. Most of us have now heard of critical race theory, CRT, but that's just the baby of the mother monster of wokeism, and that's ESG. You have this environmental social governance, which is really it's the monster that has lots of tentacles, and its effect. That's why we're seeing so many things come down economically. We see what's going on in the border. We see what's going on internationally. We see what's going on with the economy, with education, with all of these things, the gender identity crisis. All of these things are ultimately part of a Marxist system to revolutionize and destroy the United States of America as we know it. Now, I know that sounds alarmist, but this is the problem. If we read the Declaration of Independence and you understood why they separated from authoritarian England, if we understand our Constitution, and if we understand history, this is always the course that we take. So what's the answer? The answer is grassroots people, we the people who actually are the sovereign in America, need to get off the defense, get on the offense, open up our eyes and start building the world we want for our children. Rather than complaining and just reporting on all the hypocrisy that we see and crying in our Chick-fil-A soup while we wait to be rescued by God or somebody, we need to run the plays that we have in the book. And those plays are: love God with all of your heart. Be a person of moral integrity yourself. Have some fearless faith and moral grit to get involved in the political process. Halt the evil. Don't be bribed yourself by money and power. And then teach these principles to your children. If you do that, over the long haul, we win. But if we fail and we sell out for something cheap and fun now, we lose. And this is where we need to have a real time of choosing in America.
You're right. I mean, it's about each and every one of us taking on that fight and raising our families the way that we want them raised. And I think what's important here is I was thinking about what happened with the Dodgers, right? When the Dodgers caved in, recently, and they gave in to the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and brought them back. But I was thinking, would this ever happen if this group of trans men or whoever was targeting Muslims or Jews? I mean, it feels like they wouldn't. I don't believe they would have brought them back. But there's a thing about Christianity now where Christianity is being consistently targeted. And anybody who speaks out and says, I'm a Christian, this is how I believe, this is how I want to raise my children, this is what I think is morally right, gets targeted and gets ostracized by this kind of radical left that has become very powerful in our nation.
Yes, you're right. This sounds eerie when you say that, right? Christians being targeted in America? Well, why wouldn't they be? And I say that because we can look at China and see that there is real persecution going on there. We look in the Middle East, there's real Christians being killed in the Middle East. If you look at the communist Russia, you look at real Christians in Germany in World War II, you see that Christianity is always enemy number one for the destroyers of liberty. Christianity has been the most world-changing force that has ever landed on planet Earth. 2,000 years ago, God unleashed a power that was so powerful to transform the world for good that no one had ever experienced anything like this before. This is men and women like you and me being freed from the chains and the bondage of guilt and shame, armed with the word of God, and they've launched a movement that has brought more liberty, more blessing, more protection to nations across the world, and the full flower of that gospel biblical liberty we've experienced centuries here in the United States. But as God always demonstrates, covenant keepers win, covenant breakers lose. Benjamin Franklin said, you've got a free republic if you can keep it. Well, we haven't been doing a good job of keeping it because we've got to keep faith with God. We've got to stay in sacred relationship with the provider and protector of our families and our nation. And I believe we can get back there. I don't believe God's window of grace has closed, but we need to make an about face, make a 180-degree turn right now and say, oh God, we have been foolish. Forgive us, please. Turn your eyes back to us, open up the heavens and send out your blessing and turn this country around, starting with me. If we do that, and then we get back to our responsibilities in our family first, in our workplace, and in our civil government, and in our churches, get rid of this pride, humble ourselves, and do the right thing, I believe that God will begin to champion the justice of our cause and fight on our behalf. But the left isn't our biggest problem. Let me just say this, Sarah, the left is not our biggest problem. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence aren't the biggest problem. It gets much worse than drag queens at Target. It gets much worse than tuck-friendly swimwear. Take a look at ancient Egypt, the Babylonians, the Medes and the Persians. You look at the Roman Empire, persecution and suffering can get a lot worse. And God never said to his people, fear them. He says, fear me. Our biggest enemy is a righteous God in heaven who expects of his children to love him with all their heart and love their neighbor as their self. If we don't do that, he disciplines us the way a good father or mother disciplines their children, to purify their heart and bring them to their senses so that they can receive blessing. And I'm afraid we may be in that rebellious teenage stage as a nation right now, and we need to come to our senses.
That's a really great point of how you push that out that way, because I was thinking to myself, what is the worst fear if we don't change our ways, if we don't, protect our children the way we need to protect them, and if we don't protect our families and our nation the way we need to protect them? It astonishes me how many families, and I've seen so many wonderful families show up at the book signing we did in Arizona, or you across the country with your book, The Pride Before the Fall. I've seen so many wonderful families, but I've also seen the other side where I've seen parents sell their children out to be accepted by Hollywood, to be accepted by this radical left or these people that believe in the Saul Alinsky. I mean, one of the things that came to my mind while you were talking was this old saying, and I think it was more or less kind of one of my Jewish friends told me. It was like there was a man out at sea and he was drowning, and boats kept coming by to say, "Hey, do you want to get on board? Get on this raft and I'll help you." And they said, "No, I'm waiting for God." And then a bigger ship came or a bigger boat came, and he kept saying, "No, I'm waiting for God." And finally he drowned. And when he got to heaven, he said, "God, I was waiting for you." And he said, "Yeah, I sent a bunch of boats for you to get on. I was trying to get your attention." Maybe we're just not paying attention. And I don't know what it's going to take for us to do that. And maybe here's where you can transition to, talk a little bit about what families can do with Brave Books, how we can help guide our children in the right direction, and where we can go to do that, where we can find like-minded, people like us, like you and I, Kirk, that can make a difference.
So there's so much that needs to be done. What do we do about the debt ceiling? What do we do about the crisis at the border? What do we do about international relations? What do we do? Well, I love this quote by Gandalf the Grey from Lord of the Rings. So here's some Middle Earth wisdom. He said, "Other evils there are that will come, for even Sauron himself is but a servant or an emissary. Yet it is not our part to master all the tides of the world, but to do what is in us for the years wherein we have been set, uprooting the evil in the fields we know, so that those who live after may have clean earth to till. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule." And what he's saying is, we can't solve all the evil in the world, but what we can do is everything in our power during the years we have on this earth to uproot evil where we have the ability. And the number one place you can uproot evil is in your own heart first, and then in your kids, in your family, in your home. And then we work out in our places of influence. You have a platform. I have an ability to speak to people. Everyone does in their place of work, or wherever they spend their time. And what we need to do is plant seeds of truth, beauty, and goodness so that our children will have a better shot at success, a better shot at building a better world than we're seeing today. And God will send them the weather, the storms, the fresh and cool breezes of blessing, and they'll be able to know what to do in their time because they've watched their parents model for them faithfulness and moral integrity. So one way you could start, moms and dads, is if you like what I've been doing, Pride Comes Before the Fall is my newest book teaching kids about humility and the dangers of pride. And if you go to bravebooks.com, you can get this book, Pride Comes Before the Fall, absolutely free when you subscribe to the Book of the Month Club. And that's a club where they will send a brand new book with a pro-God, pro-America value to your front door every single month. And in the back of the book, there's activities and contests and games that bring your family together for family time and reinforce the messages of the book.
Yep, it's so much fun. I have my book here too. My kids love it, and all of the children in our family have this book, and have all your books too, As We Grow, which is an amazing book, your first book with Brave Books. And I'm excited to have you on the show. I want you to come back, Kirk. Thank you so much. I know you had your house upside down today, so I'm glad you made time for me. I'm glad.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Anytime. And I think you're right. There are a lot of issues in this world. We each have kind of our own mission, but let's start with ourselves and our family and our children, and let's fight for them. The most important thing we can do in our life is fight for our children. That's the most important thing, in my opinion. Give them God, fight for them, let them know that you love them.
Yeah, well said.
So folks, there you have it. Go get your Brave Books, get your children the Brave Book series. You will also get my book. If you get that book club of the month, you'll get the book right here. Club Awesome Sauce, joining the amazing Club Awesome Sauce. It has so many great lessons and games and just the most beautiful illustrations. Take a look at that. That you can imagine in this book. My children love it. I know that yours will too. And please, please, please Get Kirk Cameron's book. It's amazing. As We Grow was his first book. His second book right now, which he said you'll get free if you join our book club series. It's called Pride Comes Before the Fall. Pride Comes Before the Fall. Let's take back our nation. Let's protect our children. Let's give them a childhood worth remembering and not one that is overwhelmed by the insanity of these overly sexualized grown men and women who have turned our world upside down. Look, you can follow me on Truth at Sarah Carter Official, on Twitter at Sarah Carter DC, and on Instagram at S Carter DC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless all of our children and Kirk Cameron and all the great work he and Brave Books are doing. And God bless the great state of Texas.
Coming up on tonight's episode of Faith versus Culture, Pride Comes Before the Fall. Our conversation with Kirk Cameron coming up next.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
There are problems of sin and habit that cannot be solved outside the person of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Faith versus Culture right here on the CBN News channel. My name is Dan Andros, joined as always by Billy Hallowell. Billy, I mean, of course, it's June. We all know what June has become these days with the celebration of Pride, which is one of the 7 deadly sins. But nevertheless, it's something we have to navigate as Christians, and so we're going to have a great conversation about that today.
Well, yeah, I'm excited because our friend Kirk Cameron is joining us today. Kirk, how's it going?
Hey, it's going so good. The sun is shining. My wife still loves me, and I'm making inroads into the kingdom of darkness to shine the light. It's been a great morning. You have been all over America, literally. In recent months, you've had 2 kids' books. Your latest hit June 1st. And of course, in light of the topic that we are discussing today, Pride Comes Before the Fall. That's the title of the book. I have to ask you, what has led you in this direction of writing these books, of speaking to families so openly? Too much coffee. This has got me on the road. I can't sleep, and I need to read books to children about virtue and about wisdom. I am like everyone else who loves God, who loves their family, who's concerned about your kids' future and the future of America, concerned about the direction our culture has been heading for decades. And while we do live in the greatest country in the world, we're based and built on biblical principles. We have historical heroes that thrill us, like the Pilgrims and Martin Luther King and George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and others, not perfect men, but men who understood principles that led to freedom, liberty, blessing, protection. And there is a need for a new generation of liberty men and women to rise up. And I want to be counted among them. So what do? Start by rooting the sin out of my own heart. Because if I don't do that, I've disqualified myself for doing anything bigger than getting my own house in order, love my wife, raise my kids, and then use the opportunities I can to shine light in the darkness. And I've been traveling the country, reading books to children in public libraries. The first one was called As You Grow, about biblical wisdom and the fruit of the Spirit. And my newest one is called Pride Comes Before the Fall. And it's a book teaching kids about the value and importance of humility. As you mentioned, pride is all the rage, they say, this month. And my book comes out on June 1st, the first day of June, just in time for kids who are getting out of school and parents who are putting together summer reading programs so that their kids can learn about stuff that will equip them in their life to be healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, and it's imperative as parents for us to really bear down and teach this stuff because, as we often talk about on this show, I mean, there are these places that culture and faith intersect, and there are things that bleed into the church, and we want to make sure we're providing a biblical basis for the way we see the world. And when pride is celebrated as something that's so great, it's clearly written about differently in the Bible. God views it as differently. I mean, it's very much, see if you agree with this, Kirk. Pride, I think, is a precursor to almost every other sin, or most of the sins anyway. Do you agree with that?
100%. Man, that's spot on. We look at the 7 deadly sins, so check them out. Greed is bad, gluttony is bad, sloth, wrath, envy, lust are all bad, but none of them are as deadly as pride. Pride, it's been said, is at the base of all great mistakes. Jesus said he saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven because in his pride, he tried to overthrow God and steal his glory. And that's exactly what pride does. It feeds the me monster. It's self-focused. Another word for pride is selfishness. What's the antidote? Humility. The Bible says if you exalt yourself, you will be humbled. And if you humble yourself, you will be exalted. So let God lift you up. And that is the pathway to relational health with each other, right? When I say, Billy, you before me, Dan, you before me, I'm not all about myself. And more importantly, relational health with God. God, you get the glory. I'm not trying to steal it for myself. I'm fueled by gratitude for what you did for me. And now I'm on mission to advance the good and shine the light. Humility is what kids need to be taught today.
You know, you're speaking a lot right now to how we equip and prepare our families and our kids. You know, I think a lot of people are watching you right now, and they're watching some others, but you are one of the most prominent people out there doing what you're doing, traveling around the country, speaking the truth, rallying people together. A lot of believers, I feel like right now, they kind of woke up in the middle of nowhere. They're not sure how we got here. They're totally freaked out.
Totally.
And there's a lot of fear, right? Like, how do you move forward? What is your advice to Christians who are kind of watching right now and they're not sure how to move forward in terms of helping bleed the faith into the culture, as you were saying?
Where are you going to get your framework for what is true and for what is morally right? You're either going to get it from the media, you're going to pull it out of your own brain, or you're going to turn to the Word of God as your plumb line for truth, for moral goodness, for the definition of gender and sexuality. And if you go with the Bible and then you begin to live it out truthfully and live not by lies, other people will be attracted to your courage and they will join you. And slowly there will be a groundswell. The God's loving army of compassion will begin to speak the truth in love in all spheres of life. I can't speak where you speak, Billy and Dan. You have different spheres of influence than I do, but I can speak to my kids and I can do that more and more faithfully. I can speak to families at public libraries with my books, and I've got to do that. And we end up inspiring other people, or rather God inspires them through us. And all of a sudden, something begins to coalesce that resembles a revival. It starts out small, but it grows like the leaven that eventually leavens the whole lump. That's a picture of the kingdom of God. That's a picture of that tiny little mustard seed that grows and then fills the whole garden, becoming the biggest tree. And all the birds of the air come to make their nests in its branches. Sounds to me like a great awakening. And it always starts with something small. So do what you can where you are. And don't try to solve the Target problem single-handedly, because guess what? Target is just one small, tiny fraction of the problem. It's actually just a fruit problem on the tree of secular tyranny. The root that feeds the whole monster is the root of pride and selfishness. So you've got corporate wokeness, you've got educational wokeness, you've got all sorts of rotten fruit on this tree all around us. But if we want to change the nature of the tree from a bad tree to a good tree, we've got to get down and start to nourish the root again of biblical wisdom and living according to God's moral standards everywhere we go. And then God starts to work in us and through us to advance his purposes for which his son died. That's where we want to be.
Amen. All right. All good stuff there. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to be back with more, including a specific effort that's happening next month that you can get involved in your area. We'll talk about that and more on the other side of the break. We'll be back in a second. All right, we are back here on Faith versus Culture on the CBN News channel, and we are here with Kirk Cameron.
All right, Kirk, Pride comes before the fall. I want you to take us through this book because, again, this is a kid's book. It's a book for the whole family. What are readers going to encounter in it?
Well, first thing that you're going to see with Pride Comes Before the Fall is the beautiful illustrations. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. All of these pictures and the stuff that's going on inside is exciting. When we previewed it at the Billy Graham Library and then debuted it at the Seattle Public Library, kids were going nuts for the story because it's all about these animals who live on Freedom Island. And once a year, there's this great Rocka Rapids race. And they get in these rafts and they team up. And there's this one tiger named Valor who is the strongest of all the animals. And he thinks he's the best and he's going to get the best teammate. But he's late for the signups. So everyone's already paired up. And he gets stuck with Kevin the elephant, the rookie, the one who's never been in the race before and doesn't know how to paddle a raft. And he's so angry. He's so prideful that he makes fun of Kevin. He mocks Kevin and he ends up ruining his own chances of winning the race. A couple of weasels come along and they start tipping over the boat and he's screaming at Kevin to get them away. And they go over the falls. They wreck their boat. They're now in last place, all because of Valor's pride. And Kevin so kind, and he says, "I'm so sorry." He said, "Here, I've got an idea." And Kevin puts his trunk inside of the water. He gets to the back of the boat and he blows the water out of his trunk like a jet engine. And the boat zooms ahead and they end up with a spectacular finish with a lesson for Valor that it is more important to win at being humble and kind and putting others first than it is to be proud and full of yourself and win every race. It's a great book, beautifully illustrated. And the back of the book has all of these family activities and contests and games to pull moms and dads together with their kids in family time and reinforce the lessons of humility in the book. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a kid's book, but I mean, as a parent who has coached my kids' youth sports leagues, I think there are a lot of parents. You just made me think of that with your story there, with the competition, and they're all going towards it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of the parents there could use that lesson as well about being a little bit humble in the midst,
that's right.
of these competitions.
And so that's what I love about Brave Books is that their stories are full of adventure and action and danger. And there are villains that are really scary. And the kids just love them. And that's why so many parents are subscribing to the Book of the Month Club, because Brave Books will send a new book with a pro-God, pro-America value every month to their front door. So the kids, they're so excited. Mom, the new Brave book came. And they have the Island of Free Ice Cream. That's one that warns of the dangers of socialism. There's Elephants Are Not Birds. That is a book about God's design for gender. They're fantastic.
We've read those both. Those are both great. We have read those.
And they just keep coming. So I suggest to people, if you want to help turn the nation around by investing in the hearts and minds of children in the next generation, a great fun way to do it that your kids will thank you for is subscribe to the Book of the Month Club at bravebooks.com.
Yeah, I have to ask you, because as you're going around, you're promoting your Brave Books and you're talking to families. We've talked a lot about advice for families. How do we move forward and bleed the church into the culture? What are you seeing? Because you're on the front lines of this. You're interacting with a lot of people. What has been encouraging, challenging to you? I'd just love to hear your experience as you're bouncing around to different cities.
I remember going to Scarsdale, New York. And New York is, that's a deep blue city. And this was similar things happened in Indianapolis, broken, Seattle, a mess, beautiful places. There are great families there, but the system has just let the people down. And in Scarsdale, after reading this book, a grandma stood up and she said, "What can I do to help my grandchildren not be sucked into this black hole of progressive woke ideas?" And so we talked about that. And then a grandfather raised his hand and he said, "Could we sing God Bless America?" And we had Christians, Jews, Muslims, just all sorts of Americans with different backgrounds singing God Bless America in the public library. They turned it into a worship service. Same thing happened in New Jersey. Same thing happened when people couldn't get in to see the reading in the small reading room that Indianapolis Library gave to us to use. You had 2,000 people on all 6 floors of the library that never got to hear the book read open up their own copies of A Brave Book and host their own reading story times with the kids in the aisles of the library. And one library burst into worship songs out in the lobby because they weren't able to get in, and turned it into a praise and worship service. That kind of stuff tells me that the Spirit of God and of revival and of awakening is moving across America.
Yeah, I mean, look, I wanted to close with this, Kirk. As you're discussing that, and I've seen the pictures, I follow you on all your accounts and everything, and I see the great turnout, and there's this obvious great desire for this sort of stuff, what you're putting out with your books and the content you're putting out. And so on the one hand, I see that, and I see that the stirring of revival that you're talking about there, but then you also see the other side of it. What's your outlook on, just America, where we're headed, from a faith perspective as well? Where do you see things heading up, and what's your kind of outlook on it all?
Well, I feel the rumblings of revival, and I think that's because I've got my ear on the ground and I've got my eyes wide open and I see people waking up. But I do understand that the dark storm clouds are closing in as we look around. But I think what we need to do is we need to get our eyes off of the storm clouds and remember that the creator of heaven and earth has his sun of righteousness and justice and truth and life shining above the clouds. It reminds me when I was in Seattle, taking off on an airplane. It's dark, it tends to be, because there's lots of cloud coverage in Seattle. It's depressing. People commit a lot of suicide up there because of this sort of, seasonal depression. But as you're going through the clouds, it gets darker and less visibility. But then all of a sudden, boom, you break through and you realize it's been a sunny day all along. You're just in the midst of all of this darkness. And what I've seen is that the clouds have been darker in the past. What we're seeing with the abortion holocaust, what we're seeing with the mutilation of children in the name of gender affirming care, what we're seeing in terms of the economy and the loss of liberty because of authoritarian government, that's bad, but it's nothing compared to what it was like when the family of faith was under the boot of Pharaoh in Egypt. It's nothing like what the Babylonians did to people in the ancient world, the Medes and the Persians, the Roman Empire. When people were fed to lions, they were sawn in half, they were impaled like steak on a skewer, and they were raised up and set on fire as human torches to illuminate entertainment gladiatorial games in the Colosseum. We haven't seen anything yet when it comes to the depths of depravity of the human heart in America. And what's interesting is God never said, fear them. He said, fear me. And I'll bury them. But if you forget me, be afraid, because I will bring them to discipline my people and purify their hearts and get your eyes focused singly back on me. And I think that's what's happening in America. I think we've been distracted by so many shiny objects, our comfort, our pleasure, our prosperity, wanting to be the most loving and inclusive. And so we give up our morals and we slide over here to this woke community in order to get the corporate praise we're looking for, like Target is, like Bud Light is, like all of these, or increase our profits or whatever it is. All a bad idea. we need to get our eyes back on God, and we need to apply his word to all spheres of life. If we do that, then I think we're headed for blessing. If we don't, I fear the consequences for America.
Getting our eyes back on God. Kirk Cameron, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
God bless you guys. Keep up the great work. Thanks.
Everyone else, we'll be right back with more Faith versus Culture after the break.
And we're back on this episode of Faith versus Culture right here on the CBN News Channel. Billy, we just wrapped up our conversation with Kirk Cameron. Always great to catch up with Kirk, especially he's doing so much around the country now. He's got these books out, but he's really engaging with people and spreading a great message.
Yeah, I think it's happening at a really interesting time, too, because we're talking about all these other stories, right? The Dodgers, you go down the line, and we're starting to see people stand up, speak up, stand out, make their voice heard. And he's sort of been doing this for months, kind of providing, I think, a pathway and a blueprint for how people can do that in this chaotic culture and do it without screaming and yelling, but with love. And that's what, to me, is so appealing about the work he's doing right now.
Right. And it's not just like he was talking about, we don't want to just be on the defensive all the time and yelling about all the bad things that are going on. It's like, no, we've got to put forth a positive message, a here's what we believe message. And it's not aiming at all these other people. It's just a response, yes, because culture's getting confused and they're getting conflicting ideas and worldviews that go run counter to the gospel. And so, hey, we just present what it is and we go forward from there.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, everybody has a worldview, and this idea that's not true is one of the most sinister lies being told right now, because there is a worldview being perpetuated and everybody has a right to perpetuate their worldview. I think we've been sort of silenced into submission of believing, oh no, we have to be silent about ours because it's going to be offensive. Well, every worldview is offensive to people. If we do it in truth and love, and we do it the way we're called to, there's nothing to be fearful of. And I think we are seeing people like Kirk, again, provide that blueprint, and it's a great blueprint to follow. It really is.
Yeah, and I love what Kirk said about, hey, you got to fear God first and foremost. Fear the one who has control over your soul, right? The eternal destiny of your soul, rather than man, who can't, has no control over that whatsoever. You got to fear God first, and that should guide your actions. And so just appreciated that conversation today. But we're gonna take a quick break and we'll wrap it up on the other side of the break. This is Faith versus Culture. Back in a sec. All right, that's all the time we have for this episode of Faith versus Culture. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching and supporting CBN and the CBN News Channel. And we will be praying for you as you go throughout your week, and we'll see you back here next time. God bless.